Hey everyone, and welcome back to another Jack Reddick review. For today's Jack Reddick review, yeah, that's what I'm calling it. I know if you hate it, it's fine, I like it. We're going to be taking a look at a movie that many people have, of course, lots of anticipation with. A movie that brings us a superhero again for the upteenth time. Let's talk about Superman. I mean, everyone knows who Superman is. If you don't know who Superman is, you're probably not even Americans. Superman is like the definitive superhero. When you think of the idea of superheroes, Superman's usually the prime one that comes to mind. And while I wouldn't say he's objectively the best superhero of all time, nor would I say he's one of my all-time favorites, he's definitely a very great one. He's pretty much got every style of superhero fatigue that everybody comes for. When you think of superhero, you think of Superman because he is Superman. You get in the name. And it's a fun idea. It's a man who dedicates his life to protecting citizens of a city and a world, and you pretty much, that's what a superhero is. And so, yeah, that's what Superman is. He has all sorts of powers. He can, fly, freeze breath, invincibility, heat vision, X-ray vision, all that cool stuff. And with all that cool stuff, a hero like Superman has had a big impact on our world of superhero fatigues or whatever. Of course, he's had millions of comics, a ton of TV shows and specials, and let's see what he's like in the world of movies. How is his movie career like? Well, to many people, he's had his ups and downs. To me, dare I say it, I have not been a huge fan of the franchise of movies. Yeah, dare I say it, I haven't really enjoyed as many Superman movies as other people probably would have. The first Superman movie from 1978, I agree, that's a great one. It's fun, exciting, it's definitely a peak superhero film. It's pretty fun to enjoy. And that's a great one. Now, dare I say, people say Superman 2 is almost as good, but what if I told you I didn't care for it? Yeah, if I told you that, I really did not care for Superman 2 that much. At least the original cut. I do want to still check out the Richard Donner cut, which I have yet to find, but as for what the original cut is like, I didn't really like it. Sorry, but yeah, I didn't like Superman 2. Superman 3, people agree, is not really that good, so yeah, you can understand when I say I didn't like that one. And Superman 4, everyone likes to hate, so yeah, you understand when I say I hate that one. Then there's Superman Returns, which I kind of didn't really have a love for. It's one of those movies where you either really enjoyed it or you didn't like it, and I didn't like it. Yeah, I just couldn't get to it. It just didn't really work with Superman as well as it would for other people. And I actually have to say I feel the same way about Man of Steel. That's another one. That's another film that either Superman fans love or you just dislike, and that's me. I didn't really like Man of Steel that much. I mean, I know it's people like it when comparing it to most of the projects of that new DC franchise, but me, I just couldn't get into it. Anyway, you get the idea. I didn't care for many Superman movies. So, when this new one came out, you probably are wondering, why would I have so much interest in it if I haven't been a fan of most of the Superman movies in the past? Well, there were tons of things making this something I could be excited for. One, this would be the beginning of a brand new franchise for the DCU. You see, the original DC Extended Universe that we got was pretty badly handled, It was supposed to be like the MCU for DC, but they rushed it and we didn't get the stuff we want. We got bland movies, bland ideas, a bad system going through it. It just didn't work out. So because of how poor the DC Extended Universe was, we needed an update. We needed to be rebooted. And who better to do that than one of the biggest superhero legends for cinema of our time, James Gunn. Yep, the man who brought us the Guardians of the Galaxy movies and even helped DC out with the Suicide Squad is now taking control of DC and is going to be giving us a brand new DC universe that we can enjoy and hopefully will work better than the previous one. And to start this new universe, we of course got to start off with the man who everyone knows, so Superman. And thus, we have the new Superman movie, which is just called Superman. Funny, it's actually, I think, the first time a movie is just called Superman. I mean, even the original film was called Superman the Movie. So, yeah, this movie's just Superman, and I think that's pretty good to know, Gives you the idea of what you're supposed to expect. So, as someone who didn't care for many Superman movies, what did I think of this? Was it a great one? Does it reshape the DC movies in a new light? Does it make Superman a better superhero for cinema than I initially thought of? What were my opinions? Did I love this movie? Or do I tie it in with all the other Superman films I couldn't get into? Well, let's just do what I do best. Let's look back into some of the elements and see what we go with. Of course, we gotta start off with the action, because action is pretty much what every superhero movie goes for. And what do I think of the action in this movie? Well, because this movie was made by James Gunn, you do get a very type of action that he likes to do. He has this very nice idea with what kind of action he likes. It's the kind of action that usually features bright colors, a very settling mood, and some slow motion. Yeah, that's what his action is like. And so, of course, that's what's presented with Superman. And does it work to the advantage? Yeah, it does. Yeah, there are, of course, a lot of moments in this movie where when Superman has to fight evil or whatever, usually you'll get slow motion, you'll get tons of bright colors, and then there's the moments where they give you the idea where you feel what's happening. It's like, you'll believe a man can fly. That was the original tagline for the first movie. And granted, I think that's what the first movie did best, right? It made us actually believe in Superman as an existing superhero. And yeah, true, we all were able to believe a man can fly. And thus, I have to say, that's pretty much what we go with this movie. I think I gotta thank the action for that. Actually giving us the belief of Superman actually fighting in a real city. James Gunn really does a good job making him bright enough to where we actually can buy into it. I mean, I guess you could argue maybe sometimes it is a little too bright. There is such a thing as too bright. I mean, I know trying to make up for how dark the DC extended universe was, but you don't have to be too bright. We don't want to get blind. But for the most part, the bright colors are a fun touch, and they do make the action more fun to watch. It's more fun seeing sort of how it plays out, because every time Superman is fighting, there's this kind of motion you get with the vibe that really does make it feel like, it gives you the idea. You feel like you're really watching a real fight going down in a real city. I mean, the CGI, you could argue, may help with that. Not all the CGI in this movie was top tier. I mean, we have the dog, Crypto. He's the dog, and I'll admit, the CGI on him can sometimes be low, but he's not, it's not terrible, abysmal. I mean, it's not as bad as the Flash's CGI, so that's good. But regardless, I could go a little down. There's CGI in some fight scenes you could argue didn't have to be that excessive, but at the same time, it's believable enough, so you can't get too mad. We all like practical stuff, but when CGI looks realistic enough, we can't say we have to hate it. And I guess you can say Superman does a good job with that. It makes the CGI look well enough to where you can work with it. As long as you're not looking at the dog, because that's kind of where people would notice the CGI a little too much. Anyway, for the action, it's good. It's probably not up there with other superhero movies, especially Batman or Marvel movies, but it's still pretty good action for what it's worth. And we got to give James Gunn credit for making the action as beautiful as it was. Now let's look at adventure. There's adventure in this movie. Well, it is Superman going through it's basically just two different planets. You have Krypton and then you have Metropolis. It's just back and forth on that. And yeah, for the most part, that's pretty much what it is. It's us going back and forth between Krypton and Metropolis. There's Krypton, which is being run by robots. Oh no, our universe is taken over by robots. Anyway, yeah, robots take over Krypton, and pretty much they're the only people Superman interacts with, them and the dog. And then there's, of course, Metropolis, where Superman has all of his other people he talks to or has to deal with. And essentially what the movie does is it mostly goes back and forth on it. Like, we open on Krypton, but then Superman gets up, he's ready to go back to Metropolis, then we see a lot of stuff go down Metropolis. Then after a while, we take a nice cut back to Krypton, where Lex Luthor would be there, as he, of course, eventually finds it. And Superman has to go back to it for the sake. But then we have to cut back to Metropolis, where the action goes down. Then cut back to Krypton, where Superman has to go in. And basically, that's what it is. It's going back and forth on where Superman goes. Whether he's back on Krypton or chilling in Metropolis. I would argue that's maybe a little boy, when it's just those two locations. I mean, I know those are the only two locations Superman goes to. And granted, that's not been a problem for the other movies, because that is pretty much the only places you see Superman go to in all these movies. But I feel like this movie kind of did that back and forth thing a little too much, to the point where it did start to make me feel like there could have been more setting. I mean, there could have been more space, too. I mean, you don't really see Superman as space as much, nor do you see him have a flying scene as much. You remember the flying scene in the first Superman movie where he flies with Lois? You get a nice view of Metropolis or whatever, and it gives a nice little romantic tension. Well, we don't really get those kind of flying scenes here. And granted, on the one hand, you say that's a good thing because it could be filler, but I do feel like we could have gotten more towards flying when it's, because really the only time you see flying in this movie is when there's fighting going down. When Superman has to fight with action, that's when he flies. When he's just chilling as regular, looking around for trouble, you don't really see the flying as fun. I'll just dare I say it, the adventure in this movie was decent. I'll say that. It was decent. We did get some fun. The views, the way Metropolis and Krypton look are pretty nice. So I'll give them that. They're pretty nice set designs, or green screen CGI, whatever you want to call it. But in terms of how we play the adventure out, it is mostly just going back and forth. And some people could get tired of it. Now, it's not something that I got tired of. I just, kind of make this fall in a victim of, where are we going with it? Is Superman really just going to be spending the whole movie going back and forth in these worlds? That's pretty sad life when you have to keep doing that. Anyway, now for science fiction. About as good as all the science fiction Superman movies. Yeah, my opinion on science fiction is pretty much the same with all these Superman movies. Well, okay. Granted, I will say Superman 4 and Man of Steel science fiction were kind of the downgrades. I'll admit, those are the only two Superman movies where the science fiction portion I didn't work with. But in all the other Superman movies, it's pretty good. Because, you had the idea, right? Superman was born on Krypton. He was sent to Metropolis to protect and serve the city. Dedicate his life for bringing hope and a nice respect towards everyone. So that's what it is. And in terms of science fiction, it's pretty easy to follow. I gotta say, most superhero movies throw in as many stuff as possible, and you get as many villains too, but with Superman, or at least with this movie, there's not that much. It's just that idea presented with Superman going on this adventure. They don't throw in too many different elements. It's not like we now can use Krypton's technology to do that or anything. It's just they utilize what the tools. They only give us a few tools, and we can work with them throughout the movie. We don't have to provide all these brand new tools every hour. It's just we get the idea and we work with it. And even if it does do that, it doesn't come off as too hard to follow. Everything makes sense. I mean, maybe not realistic per se, but I understand it pretty well. I can understand how Krypton technology can do this, or how Superman's abilities are able to work with this. We know Superman can use heat vision, fly, freeze breath, and all that. We know he can do that, and this movie doesn't try to give him any other powers that we weren't aware of. We don't have to know that he can now spin the Earth around to go back in time, or kiss his girlfriend to make her forget he's Superman. We don't have to worry about any of that. All we have to worry about is him having those superpowers and using them when he needs to. So yeah, gotta give this movie credit. It doesn't give Superman too much control, being able to do whatever he wants. It doesn't turn him into a god. It lets us know that he has powers, but he's not God. And that's where the story comes in. Yes, of course, this movie's got a story, and because this is a new take on Superman, you think you already got what you're going for. You think you know what you're going to expect. The story is that Superman starts as a baby named Kal something. I forgot exactly what the name was. But anyway, he was born on Krypton. His parents had to abandon him as well as Zod. And Superman was sent to Metropolis, where he's raised by other parents. They knew about his abilities to fly, have strength, and all that. And then he utilizes them to become a superhero to save the day, meets Lois Lane, works at the Daily Planet, and deals with a villain like Lex Luthor or whatever. So that's pretty much what the story is, right? That's what we're going to get in this movie. Actually, no. This movie does not tell us the origins of Superman. No, it actually does something different. Instead of telling origins, since I guess we have seen them before enough times, maybe, this movie actually starts off with Superman already, all his power. It actually starts off with Superman losing a battle. And throughout the movie, it's basically the story of how he has to reconcile his alien Kryptonian heritage with human upbringing. And he seems to realize that he's as time goes by, after losing to Lex Luthor and after he sets him up in a terrible situation, he seems to find himself to be stuck in this world of truth, justice, and all that nice embodiment he grew to. He sees to notice that it all isn't really what it used to be. Like, people don't have that respect towards him anymore. They seem to find him more controversial than originally. And he has to deal with that sad fact and how he can work with it. Can he still be a superhero in the city, or will all that hate provided by people result in a problem? And that's where the story goes. Everything's already intact. This movie doesn't introduce us to Superman's elements. We're not introduced to how he became a hero. We're not introduced to how he met Lex. We're not introduced to how he met Lois. Lois already knows his identity. We didn't have to go through that arc. All these characters are already in the movie. So, yeah, this is a different kind of story. And I both like and dislike it. Let me explain. On the one hand, yes, it's great to know that we're doing this. We're getting the nice story of Superman's life, and kind of seeing a new light to it, a new kind of story, not just rehashing the old kind of story that we already know of. So it's great to see all this. Great to see him deal with this kind of situation of him, having to deal with this kind of controversy and crumbling of the metropolis, having it become sort of like Gotham, where people are not as happy as you would want them to be. And yeah, it's good to know that they're going for a different route instead of just giving us an origin story. And that's good to know. On the other hand, however, there are some things I kind of wish were introduced. Well, I'm not as upset with Superman's origins not being introduced, because we do already know them pretty well. I do feel like some things they throw in did deserve a little bit of introduction. For example, we are introduced to a group of three men known as Justice something. It was a group. It was Green Lantern, Hawkgirl, and the other one's name? I'm trying to think of the name, but yeah, we're introduced to this trio who are essentially other heroes in this case. They are basically a trio of heroes that Superman, does he have to compete with them? Is that what's going on? Well, it's more so they're the ones who have to protect him, as well as study him for all the controversy he gets. Like when he loses a battle, when people see him for not being the kind of caring man they've always seen him for, they're the ones who question him. They're like, "Are you a bad person? Are you really against us? What's your angle? What are you up to?" It's more so, we're kind of they're kind of the superhero group that Superman has to rebel with. They don't end up turning against each other to the point where it's an enemy situation. It's a Batman versus Superman situation, and thank God. No, it's just a trio of heroes that do help out and are as super, and they pretty much are just what Superman has to work with. He has to tell them that he can save the day too, and has to prove to them that he's not the evil man that Lex Luthor revealed him as. Like when Lex Luthor made it to Krypton, made people believe that Superman was out to destroy their world and has something against the humans. That's when people turn against him, and now it's just this trio that was kind of randomly shown up that we have to work with. And it's Green Lantern too. Green Lantern's a pretty big deal. Granted, we haven't seen Green Lantern on film in a while, because remember when Ryan Reynolds was Green Lantern, and yeah. But still, I feel like him showing up this time and not really getting an introduction of his own, I feel like it's kind of, I'm scared that that's kind of going in a similar route with what the DC Extended Universe have. Introducing all these characters without really giving them much of an introduction, more so, I'm just hoping that this doesn't become a trend. Like, the next movie that released won't introduce more superheroes when we didn't expect them. Because, like, a movie when the movie is just called Superman, it's just supposed to be, Superman, right? I really wasn't a big fan of the idea of having Green Lantern, Hawkgirl, and crap, his name. He was black, I know that. But anyway, whatever the name was. Anyway, it was a trio of superheroes, and we all know who Green Lantern was, so I don't have to explain that. But still, I feel like the trio didn't really need to be introduced here, and if they did, maybe a tad more fail introduction would have been nice. Just saying. Now, other than that, everything else worked fine. It was a fun seeing a new take for the story. I really guess my only problem was the amount of things that could have had a better introduction. Like the opening, where it opens with Superman left on Krypton. He was left completely fatal because he just lost the battle. I kind of would like to see more of that battle. I guess it makes sense that they wanted to go for more of an angle of beginning what Superman's motive is. But I would have liked to have at least seen some note of that battle. Like maybe at some point in the movie we get a backstory of what the battle was, instead of just not being able to see that battle at all. It's kind of a letdown, if I'm being honest. So yeah, that's kind of an issue. But other than that, those are really the only elements that we're missing. It's just one of those cases where the idea of making Superman's first new adventure be not an origin story, but rather a actual new adventure is both fun and exciting, but also flawed. So on the whole, it's pretty good. It's still flawed. Just saying, there's flaws in it. But first, let's talk about it. Now let's talk about one thing that I usually don't talk about these reviews, but because this is a reboot, I do want to bring up the casting. Not for all the actors, there's a lot of them, but for mainly Superman, Lois Lane, and Lex Luthor. The new actors for these roles, what are they like? I figured I might as well share my opinion on how these three portray their roles, because, there's a lot that they have to compare to. First, of course, let's take a look at David Cornsweet as Superman. Fun fact, I just found this guy shares a birthday with me. Isn't that awesome? Anyway, he's good. Yeah, I gotta say, he's honestly pretty good Superman. The best? No. It's always gonna be Christopher Reeve. But he's really does a really good job at presenting himself in the role. I mean, when I look at him on one face, I think, isn't he a little too young to be an American hero like this? But he really does a good job at setting in. I really can believe to it. So, gotta give him credit. He's not too young like Brandon Routh. He's not too try hard like Henry Cavill. He's honestly a pretty well put together Superman. He's no Christopher Reeve, but I'd say he's probably maybe second best, right? Yeah. I probably think he is second best in terms of films, at least. Second best Superman. He really does settle it pretty well. Now, what about Rachel Brosnahan as Lois Lane? She's fine, I guess. I mean, I'll admit, she's decent enough. I guess, okay, granted, I will say she is still second favorite Lois Lane, but still, in terms of overall, it's just decent. She does an alright job with the character. I guess I just wasn't as interested with her arc in this movie as it seemed. They seem to really try to give her character too, but most of it results in her interaction with the other people at the Daily Planet, and sometimes I don't really care that much about it. But as a performance, I guess it is decent enough. It's definitely better than Amy Adams' Lois. I don't really think that worked. But overall, I guess it's just one of the not really as important of a character for this movie as it seemed they tried to make it. They tried to make her important, but dare I say it didn't try hard enough. Now, what about Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor? Well, what if I told you that he's probably the best role out of all these characters? Yeah. Out of every actor in this movie, Nicholas Hoult provided the best portrayal. I have to admit, I was amazed by his Lex Luthor. I could not think it would work because he's so young. He has hair. And, does he really work in that role of playing an evil dictator like Luthor? Can someone who's supposed to be so diabolical be played by someone who seems so humble? I didn't think it could work. But my God, it did. I really was amazed by his portrayal as Lex. I really think his performance as Luthor was the best kind of performance in this movie. In fact, what if I told you that he's my all-time favorite Lex Luthor? Yeah, I said it. I know. I think he's better than Gene Hackman. Gene Hackman did a good job as Lex Luthor. He definitely was well put together for the role. But I just feel like he wasn't good enough for me to call him top tier. Okay, I don't know. I feel like Gene Hackman's just too iconic of an actor for me to buy into it that he's supposed to be Lex. I most times when I see him, I just see Gene Hackman in a silly superhero movie, but for the most part, he was a good Lex Luthor. I just think Nicholas Hoult provided the role in a much more sturdy vow, and a role that he really could shape into. What about Kevin Spacey's Lex Luthor? Well, he's good too, but again, I see Kevin Spacey more than I see Lex, so that's kind of the problem. Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor? Nicholas Hoult is an amazing Lex Luthor, man. Come on. I'm sorry. I know it may be a hot take to some people, but I think Nicholas Hoult's performance as Lex was the best part of this movie. It had a lot of fear, some comedy, and a good sense of who he is. So, dare I say it, he's the best Lex Luthor I've seen, and the best performance in this movie. So, props to Nicholas Hoult. He proved himself to be a good actor by portraying a character we wouldn't expect him to work with. So, that's what we got. And that's all I have to say about the story. Did you get enough of it? Well, that's all I have to say. How does it work as a superhero movie? What do I think of Superman in general? I think it's an improvement. I think this is a really good movie. I think it's a 7 out of 10. It's not as great as the first Superman movie, but it's still a lot better than every other Superman movie I've seen. So I really do think this movie deserves the credit. I was amazed by how much I liked this movie. I'm impressed. James Gunn was able to make this movie work. He's able to give us new hope for hopefully what will become a nicer, more complex, and more well put together DC franchise. So let's hope that he can keep this going. We can get movies that are just as beautiful and just as nicely put together as this. Again, maybe 7 out of 10s to some people is a little low, but like I said, some of the action was a little out there. Some of the CGI wasn't top tier. The addition of this Green Lantern trio was a tad unnecessary. And Lois Lane as a character was better in concept. But those are minor flaws. They're not that big of a deal. It didn't bother me as much. They were minor. Not even really that. They weren't even really flaws per se. They were just tiny elements that make it a 7 out of 10. It's still a really good movie. If you like superhero movies, you definitely have to see it. You probably already have though. If you haven't, you're probably planning to. It's a pretty great one. It's definitely. Is it the best superhero movie seen this year? Well, let's see. There isn't much competition. It's really between this and Thunderbolts. They're both good movies, so I'm not going to compare them. But overall, it's a really good movie. It's got great elements. Maybe not every element's great, but the elements that are great are tons of fun. So you will have a good time with this movie. And yeah, I think we do have new hope for what could hopefully be a new and exciting DC universe. The fact that I was able to like a Superman movie after so long does give me hope. So yeah, let's hope more Superman and more superhero stories DC gives us will work just as well. Hopefully we can see movies that are just as great as Superman. Hopefully we can see superhero movies that can improve themselves from what Superman had. Hopefully Superman will still remain an iconic superhero. Let's just all agree Batman's better.